Yep, I just started the record.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I hereby call this meeting of the Board of Adjustment to order. My name is Crystal Halverson, and I serve as the chair of the board. I live in Elk Mound Township, and I'll have the other members introduce themselves and what township they're from, and that will serve as our roll call.
David Bartlett, Town of Sheridan. Jerry Porter, Town of Tanner.
Thank you, everybody. Before we begin, let's first confirm that proper notice was given for this meeting and the scheduled hearing. Anne?
So the public hearing notice was published in the Dunn County News on April 3rd and April 10th, 2024, and it was also mailed out to neighbors within 300 feet, the division supervisor, and other agencies that are involved here, like the Dunn County Highway, or not Dunn County Highway, but the town of Red Cedar. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, and then I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of information. The Zoning Board of Adjustment functions like a court and must follow state laws and local zoning ordinances. The zoning board cannot change or ignore any part of an ordinance or state law, but must apply the laws as written. Our board may only grant a variance, special exception, or administrative appeal if the applicant provides evidence showing that they meet all the legal standards for that decision. The legal standards of the zoning board will use to decide on each application have been provided to the applicant and will be described at this meeting as well. So each hearing, we only have one hearing today, will be opened up by a staff report. And then the applicant, if desired, can be sworn in and present any more reasons or evidence to support why they think they meet the legal standards for the variance. The board can ask questions of zoning staff and of the applicant. And then we will also have an opportunity to hear from anybody else in the audience who wants to give testimony. And then after the hearing is closed, we will deliberate and decide right in front of you all whether the applicant has met the standard. Then any evidence will be filed in the zoning office and mailed to the parties. Minutes of the board meetings and decisions are available in the zoning office and also on our Dunn County website. Any decision that this board makes may be appealed by commencing an action in Dunn County Circuit Court within 30 days after the decision is filed in our office. And that's what I have. So first we will, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last time, and they're in your packet. A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So now I'm going to call the public hearing open, variance application number 24-001, Tom and Carrie Grau. So this is the setback applicant, and I'll have Anne start with the staff report.
Right, good morning, everyone. I am just going to share my screen so we can kind of follow along with the meeting packet. I think. All right, just get it back up to the top here. All right. So the applicants are seeking an after-the-fact area variance to reduce the setback distance between 557th Street and a detached garage pursuant to section 13.3.2.05, which stipulates all structures must be positioned at least 63 feet from the center line of any Class E highway or platted streets. Approval of the request would allow the detached garage to remain in its current location. And to the right, I just have a real small photo of the garage, but I will bring up more photos. So in the applicable regulations, we're looking at 13.3.2.04. Class E is considered a town road located within subdivisions, platted streets. So in this case, the road 557th Street is located in the Timber Valley subdivision. And then the setback distances for these Class E highways is 30 feet. And I wanted to go over the purpose of the ordinance as well. That's listed here under 13.1.07. So it's the purpose of the ordinance through regulation of the use of lands and structures through the establishment of physical standards, through the creation of separate zoning districts, and through mechanisms provided herein for enforcement and administration to promote public health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the citizens of Dunn County, to encourage planned and orderly land use development, to aid in the implementation of the Dunn County Comprehensive Land Use Plan, to protect property values and the property tax base, to permit the careful planning and efficient maintenance of highway systems, to ensure adequate highway utility, health, educational, and recreational facilities, to recognize the needs of agriculture, forestry, industry, and business and future growth, to encourage uses of land and other natural resources which are in accordance with their character and adaptability, to provide adequate light and air, to encourage the protection of groundwater resources, the preservation of wetlands, and the conservation of soil, water, and forest resources, to protect the beauty and amenities of landscape and man-made developments, to provide healthy surroundings for family life, and to promote the efficient and economical use of public funds. All right, so here's a summary of the application. Application number 69523 for a variance was received by our office on February 15th, 2024. And then it was assigned permit number, application permit number BAR 24001. The applicants are Tom and Kari Grau, and they reside at N5151 557th Street, which is also the subject property. A zoning permit was approved for a single-family dwelling and an attached garage located at the subject property. The plot plan for this permit was revised prior to the permit expiration date to include the addition of an 18 by 27-foot detached garage. The revised permit is null and void per Dunn County Zoning Ordinance 13.4.0.03, as this was issued to an I guess because the ordinance is, well, we'll get into it later. I'm sorry. I'm skipping ahead. So that was approved. There's a sanitary permit that was approved on September 28th, 2021. This is a mound system, and it's used to treat the wastewater for the 3-bedroom single-family home on the property. The compliance with this property became a question in October of 2023. We started getting phone calls regarding the setback compliance for a detached garage at the subject property. Land use staff conducted a site visit and measured the nearest side of the detached garage to be about 3.5 feet from the road right-of-way for 557th Street. Again, per the ordinance, a setback distance of 30 feet from the right-of-way is mandated for Class E highways, platted streets, given that 557th Street is a 66-foot wide road requiring a 33-foot wide right-of-way. Structures must be positioned at least 63 feet from the center line of 557th Street. So as zoning administrator, I outlined some options for achieving compliance. So to get the shed back into compliance, there's 3 things that the property owner could do. Number 1, they can obtain an approved area variance, which would reduce the required setback to approximately the location that the shed is located, or the detached garage is located at. If that's approved by the board today, a zoning permit can then be issued by staff for the detached garage. Option number 2 is to just remove the detached garage, and number 3 is to relocate the detached garage to a compliant location. Steps taken so far. So staff had reached out to the property owners, and since that day, they have been in contact with us and they've been working closely to resolve this. They were made aware of it, I believe November 2023 was the first time they were told by staff. They also invited staff out to the site, and during that site visit, photographs were taken, and those are the photographs that you'll find in the packet and that we'll be looking at today. So the county surveyor provided a drawing. This is for reference only, as we can't, speak to the accuracy of this, but the numbers are correct, but just keep that in mind. So on this map, you can see that there is a Class E highway setback, and that's shown in lime green. And then the home is meeting this setback. You can see where the structure is here. This photo doesn't show the detached garage, but that's represented by this rectangle here. And it's an 18 by 27 foot garage. So granting of the variance would reduce the road right-of-way setback for the detached garage from 66 feet from the center line to roughly 36.5 feet, which is a difference of 26.5 feet. All right, I'm going to go into some of the property conditions and existing structures on the property. This is an elevation map. So from the map, you can see that up in the northeast corner, this is the highest point of the property, running along here, and then it generally slopes down into this low area here, and there is a stormwater retention area there, and I'll show you that next here. So here's a photo that was taken of that stormwater retention area. You can see the slopes over here. And this area here where staff was standing does slope down in there pretty significantly. There's a retaining wall. You can see the detached garage here. There's a retaining wall behind it. And then you can just barely see it, but there is, their wellhead is right here. You can see the garage, the door to the house, and then here's the well. There's a layout of the home that was submitted with their original application. So their private septic system, this is the drawing, the as-built drawing that was included in their permit. You can see the house here. It runs over to the south and then is located in the southwest corner. And this also shows where that stormwater easement area is too, which runs along the southern line of the property and comes up. Here's another aerial photo of the property. Again, you can see that stormwater retention area, how it runs along here. Here's the septic tank, and then there would be the mound system. Just zooming out, so you can see the subdivision here. Their property is in the highlighted area. I tried to kind of overlay the as-built over the photo just to get a really clear picture of where everything is. And it doesn't show it here, but that well would be right here, and the garage is about here. You can see my mouse moving. And I can certainly bring these maps up later during discussion. Just some site photos. Here's, the road, 557th Street is on the left side here. Here's the garage. There's a small apron. Another view. This photo was taken, you can see the slope a little bit better behind the house. And another retaining wall. You can see the well again here. So I threw in a Google photo too, just because you could see a little bit more of the vegetation. Location. So in accordance with section 13.4.0.04 sub E, the BOA may only grant a variance if the applicant provides evidence that they meet the legal standards, establishing hardship. So those are unnecessary hardship, unique property limitations, and no harm to public interests. And I did provide a little bit of information about each of those. No harm to public interest. I just want to call this one out because there's a little more information for this one. That needs to be applied as we look at the purpose statement of the ordinance, and I've added that again here, but we did already read through that at the beginning of this report. So we also have principles for to serve as a guide for the board's decision. The burden of proof is upon the applicant to prove the need for the variance. Hardship, loss of profit, self-imposed hardships, such as that caused by ignorance, deed restrictions, proceeding without a permit, or illegal sales, are not sufficient reasons for getting a variance. The plight of the applicant must be unique, such as a shallow or steep parcel of land, or a situation caused by something other than his or her own action. Hardship justifying a variance must apply to the applicant's parcel or structure and not generally to the other properties in the same district. Variances allowing uses not expressly listed as permitted or conditional uses in a given zoning district shall not be granted. And the variance must not be detrimental to adjacent properties. The variance must, by standard, be the minimum necessary to grant relief. The variance cannot be in conflict with the spirit of the ordinance or other applicable ordinances, nor contrary to state law. The BOA acts as an agent of Dunn County and to preserve the ordinance without modification as far as possible while ensuring substantial justice for the individual. Violations by or variance granted to neighboring owners do not justify a variance. So to aid in the BOA's decision-making process, staff have designed a decision worksheet using educational materials provided by the UW-Madison Division of Extension, Land Use Training and Resources, and the Center for Land Use Education, Stevens Point. This worksheet is included in the meeting packet and intended to assist the BOA in their decision-making and serve as a written record of their process and findings. So the BOA will vote on the application and direct the planning and land use staff accordingly. The BOA members must refer to specific evidence when rendering their decision. The BOA is only allowed to grant a variance if the application provides evidence that ordinance standards will result in unnecessary hardship. The hardship is due to unique conditions of the property, and the variance will not harm the public interests. So if the BOA determines the applicant has met the legal standards and decides to grant the variance, staff have proposed adding the following conditions. This variance approval is granted as a one-time exception specifically for the structure outlined in the application. Any future expansion of the structure or proposed constructions on the subject property will require separate approval from the appropriate zoning authority. The conditions, setbacks, and requirements outlined in this variance approval are applicable solely to the described structure in the application and findings. They shall not be considered as precedent for future variances or construction projects on the subject property. Additionally, the following actions will need to be taken. The applicant is required to apply for and obtain an approved zoning permit for the detached garage as described in the application. This zoning permit must adhere to all zoning permit requirements and comply with the conditions of the approved variance. And then in your packet, I've also included the application materials and other maps for reference. And that is the end of the report.
Thank you, Anne. The thing that you gave me is not the decision matrix, but something for me to sign from last time.
That's correct. It should be in the packet. That's okay.
We can also have it up on the screen when
Yeah,
we
I
get
can
to
just
that
do
point.
that. Yep.
That's fine. Thank you, Anne, for your report. Does anybody seated on the board have questions specifically for Anne at this time? Jill, that wasn't a question. Okay, very good. So the next part of the hearing will be to hear from people in the audience. We're going to start with the applicant if they wish to come up and provide more information. Then we would move to anybody else who wants to speak on behalf of the applicant in favor of this variance. Then for anybody who is opposed to the variance has an opportunity to speak. And finally, anybody who just has some information, is neutral on the decision, but just has information to share. So first, does the applicant wish to come up? Come on up. Will you please state your name and address?
I'm good.
You're
Okay.
I just want to introduce myself. I'm Kari Grawl. My husband Tom is with me today. We just wanted to make sure
Can you
that,
state your address for me?
I'm sorry,
That's
Kari
okay.
Grawl, address is N5151, 557th Street, here in Menominee.
Okay, and then do you agree to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but today?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Sure. I just wanted to come up and make sure that everybody had a full understanding that we thought that we did everything correctly. We reached out, we were asking questions. We would never have put this up thinking that we were breaking any rules or any laws or anything like that. We obtained permits to move a gas line because the gas line would have been right underneath our garage. We obtained permits to get a new culvert, to extend the driveway. So in all of that, we thought we were doing everything that we needed to do to make sure that we were in compliance with everything. So I just wanted to come up and state that personally and see if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask myself or my husband.
I just have a curiosity. Did you purchase the house or did you build it?
We purchased the house.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody? Quiet group today, Jerry.
So you said you did everything right, as in getting the permits.
Mhm.
And that permit clearly stated the setback.
In looking at everything that we went through, the county website had incorrect, or I don't want to say incorrect information, but we were looking at all of the information that we were provided. There was things that were contradictory to each other. So we, based on everything that we were looking at and reaching out to the zoning commission and filling out the paperwork with them, we assumed that they knew what the rules were and everything that we were applying for was written right there. I mean, they drew in the garage. Their team drew in the garage of where we were putting it and approved it.
In the current location,
Correct.
it was approved.
Correct.
Sec. We'll get to that, I guess, Ann.
I can bring up the permit and show it to you guys too, and we can take a look at it, but I don't want to get in the way
Are
of.
there other questions?
Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody else on the board have a question right now for the applicant?
If it had to be moved,
Can you use your microphone? Thank you.
if it had to be moved, is there a spot that it could be put on the property?
And you saw the slope behind the garage.
Right,
That's
that's
a-
why I'm asking.
Yep, that is a severe slope down. The well is 16 feet behind the attached or the detached garage and 6 feet out from the attached. So moving it back would be, the well is right there and the retaining wall that we built to keep that dirt in, because we had to have an excavator come in and fill all of that in order to put the garage where it is. On the other side of this house, it is a slope. It's the septic system like was shown on there. Then we have like a waterway that goes between our house and the neighbor's house. And then there's a waterway down to the retention pond. So there really is no other place on the property based on the sloping and declines of the property.
Okay.
Looking at the pictures and such, I've read through the whole thing and I understand exactly what occurred. But the garage could be moved back 10 feet if it needed to be. The retaining wall, how far is the retaining wall from the back of the garage?
I don't know exactly how much that is.
No, just from the photos that, like you said, it was filled in from the retaining wall to the garage, so that's somewhat at the same grade.
Yeah, I mean, we filled that,
Huh?
There is a well, but
yeah, the well is right there.
Yeah, there is a well,
Mhm.
but the garage isn't, from where the house, where the attached garage is to where the other garage is, there's a little bit of a space there, probably 2 or 3 feet. Maybe, so it's not in line like this, it's offset just a little bit.
Right, because from what we understood, the peak of the end of the roof coming down from the house and the end of the garage had to be so far apart. So we had to follow those rules, which we thought we were doing. And then as you go back, if we were to move it back, we would be impeding on the property line on that side. Because we are only 10 feet from that property line. So because otherwise the roofs of the house and the detached garage would almost be touching each other.
So the property line on that side isn't parallel to the garage wall.
It is, but if you look at the drawings, the property lines aren't straight.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions from anyone? Right now?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to come forward to give testimony in favor of the applicant? Okay, yep, come on up. And you also please state your name and address for me.
Bob Cook, Chairman, Town of Red Cedar. I reside at E6477 490th Avenue,
And do you agree?
Town of Red Cedar.
Thank you. And do you agree to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth today?
I hope so. Yes.
Thank you. You may proceed.
I feel that this has been a comedy of errors. The permit that was originally granted to, I believe, Tim Winsand, who built the house, should not have been extended. And that's what did happen here to allow this now existing garage. That permit should have been closed out. A separate, would it be a zoning permit, Ann, or what do you need for a garage?
It's a zoning permit, but it'd be, an accessory structure.
Yeah, that's what should have happened. I don't believe that the measurements, even the ones that I've seen on two different drawings, are correct. And I don't know what your measurements came out to be upon site visit. I thought also that perhaps it could be moved back to the west. But I don't know how well that would work now because you'd have to bring in fill and possibly extend the retaining wall. Can you pack the dirt well enough that the structure will hold up? Because, typically you pack a larger area than the garage footprint right now. And to try to repack the ground behind the garage without moving it until you have the base put in, I don't think that'll work very well. As far as the town of Red Cedar is concerned, we do not really object to it. I gave him the permit for the extended driveway because I would rather have one driveway coming out to the road than two separate driveways. I don't know if residents complained about not being able to see well out of their properties because of the distance that is to the road. I haven't heard any complaints on that. I don't know if there is. Mark, you got a question. What is it?
Just looking at it, the only question I had, I mean, I read your town proceedings as well. 33-foot setback, I mean, that's what all of our town roads are. They're 66 feet. If this was not a subdivision and was a town road in a classical sense, you would have a ditch there and you wouldn't be able to get out of that garage.
Right.
The only question, the other reason I'm not proposing that it be moved or anything else. I'm just for discussion. When you back out of that garage, it's likely you're going to be backing out on the road. You understand?
I can see that.
Because of the space.
Yep.
Would it be? I don't know. I'm just talking here, Bob.
I understand. And I went through this in my mind too. But what I see right now is because of the lay of the land and the curve that they're on, they do have pretty good visibility both directions up and down the road. and there's no other obstructions out there to hinder their vision. Now, had this been on the opposite side of the road, it would be a little more difficult while backing out. And I don't know what the purpose of this garage is gonna be. Is it gonna be for a automobile that they use every day, or is it going to be a boat or a camper or something? And it may not travel in and out as often.
Yeah, the only thing I was wondering is if they backed out of that garage, they probably could back out of that garage without being on the road right, on the road proper.
Pretty much.
And then they could turn and use their driveway.
Yep. That was part of the reason for the extended long culvert driveway. So you don't have to back straight out onto the road and then turn your vehicle, because there would be no obstruction between their original driveway and the second driveway, which is now one solid surface. There will be when it gets paved here.
Yeah.
I think that mitigated part of the problem.
Yeah, but
I do.
the only issue I had is that when they come out, when they're backing out of their garage, they're possibly backing out onto the proper road, on the road proper. With the space, if the 33 feet to the center line, the road proper is probably a 20 or 22-foot road top.
Yep,
22 foot,
I think it is, yeah.
12, so that
22.
leaves 20 feet. Which would probably be fine. That's the only question, that's the only thing I was wondering about was the safety aspect of backing out of that garage onto the road proper.
From my own experience, I have probably a 20-foot driveway in my yard where my garage is. And the minute that I start backing out of the garage, as soon as my front fenders clear the garage door, I'm turning so I don't back up onto my lawn. And I have no problem with the distance they have there. So I don't think it's gonna be a serious problem.
No, I'm fine with it. I just,
Thank you,
I-
Mark. Do you have anything more you'd like to testify?
I don't think so.
Okay, go ahead, David.
If it wasn't there already and we were looking at this, thinking that there's, I don't know how many there, 30 some places at least,
Mhm.
that you could end up with garages backing up onto the roads. I mean, there's a lot of issues because when you have a garage that isn't being used as your everyday garage, it's usually a camper, boat, whatever, and sometimes they're parked in front of the garage door for one reason or another. I see that quite often. It's getting the issues of being close to the road.
And
What would the town board feel, do you think, if you ended up with more than one, quite a few of them on, in a situation like this? If it wasn't there,
that's exactly why we had a second meeting on this, because of that possibility. What we have to remember though, is this is a low-speed road, local traffic. You should have children at play out there, kids and toys and stuff and pets. It is their responsibility to drive cautiously, and it's to their advantage not to leave something sitting out there by the road. If it had not been constructed already, we would not allow it. As simple as that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys good for now for questions? Okay. Anybody else who wants to speak in favor of the applicant? And do we have anybody else who would like to speak in opposition? Yep, go ahead. Come on up. I think you know the drill. Please state your name and address for me.
Barb Lenander, and my husband Mike and I live at N 5151, 557th Street in Menominee.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but this morning?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, thanks first of all for allowing the hearing to be public. and an opportunity to speak. Our property is adjacent to the Gralls to the north, so we're on the closest side that the newly constructed garage is. And 2.5 years ago, when we had our house built, it was with the idea of optimizing the views of the topography. And 1.5 years after that, when the Gralls had put up their garage, it did entirely block the views down 557th and including 510th Avenue. And we just assumed that all of the permitting and, proper documentations were applied for. And by the way, I do have before and after photos if that would help at all. We also invested in landscaping and around the house and in the back. And those views from the street of our house and our property are also blocked. Now, a number of our friends and family and other neighbors have commented about how the metal structure is so close to the road, blocks the views, and we feel that the placement is the greatest factor, but that changes the aesthetic of the neighborhood, frankly. And consequently, we feel that that would negatively impact our property value. Now, we're sympathetic to the position Kari and Tom are through. It's a difficult situation, but as Bob Cook pointed out, it never should have been constructed to begin with, the permit extended and so forth. And in light of this, we're just requesting that you not approve the variance.
If you have photographs that you'd like to submit, you should. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the speaker? If you don't mind, just a moment so everyone can see those photographs before they see if they have any questions. Thank you. And while we look at those, and have you had any other pieces of feedback that have come in the tenor of some of those phone calls that you got?
So I know I personally answered one phone call. It was just somebody calling because they had asked to build a similar structure and were denied. So they saw this one and thought, well, how come they get to do it? So that was what initiated their call. I'm not sure if my other staff recall talking to anybody. Do you?
Miss Blenander was the only, and the only person that I spoke to regarding this request.
Waiting to see if anybody has any questions. Okay, so everybody on the board has had a chance to look at the pictures. Just wanted to see if anybody else had any other questions for Barbara. You good, Jill? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else from the floor who would like to speak? Okay. So we won't have any more questions for applicants then if I close the hearing. Is that correct?
If you close the hearing, nobody else from the public has the right to come up to speak, but if you have questions, that's
We
fine.
can call on them. Okay, very good. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting and then we can move on to our next agenda item, which is this variance application. So we can have a little bit of discussion, ask any other clarifying questions that we have, or we can also start with a motion. And I wonder if you might put those conditions up on the board again.
Sure. One moment.
I have a question.
Yes, Jerry, go ahead.
Jeez.
Sure. No pressure.
I'm not the best at navigating those windows. Um, You wanted the hardship ones, the necessary hardship tests, or which standards did you want up there? Or there was a longer list of the ones that are in the ordinance?
I thought you had like a list of 2 potential conditions
the
that you could
conditions, okay.
apply to a motion. Yeah,
Yep.
thanks.
Yep, those
And,
are
and
right here.
anybody here on the board can ask to see anything. Go ahead, Jerry.
So I appreciate Bob's input as to one permit being closed and a new one being applied for. I don't understand, and can you help me understand the conflict in which has been cited as to everything was done correct? And obviously it's not.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna change the screen so we can actually take a look at the permit here.
Of course.
So this is the variance permit, so it'll take me a second to scan down. So this is what I'm gonna call the revised permit because the original permit that came in was from Timber Ridge Homes. And it was for the house with attached garage and deck. This and detached garage was written in later by, I'm going to assume staff, but I can't say for sure who wrote this. I believe that the Gralls called the office and talked to one of our staff members, and that is who wrote this in. So it was done over the phone. And I believe the phone call was summarized as when we asked the staff person about it, that they had called, she looked and saw that they still had a valid zoning permit. So she just wrote in the detached garage here. And then there is a drawing that was submitted with the application originally. However, this 18 by 27 foot square and this 35 with the arrow and this 10 with the double arrow was not there originally, and the staff person added that in. To me, it's unclear what this is measuring, what this 35 feet means. It's actually at, I believe, 36.5 feet is the first edge from, I'd have to bring up my other map because there's so many numbers going through my head right now. But there was never a site visit to confirm that this was staked out correctly and meeting all the setbacks. There wasn't anything in the email or correspondence that said, here's what your setbacks are, here's what you're meeting. So that's kind of where that's at. I do have to add too that, just because a zoning permit is issued in error does not grant a variance. We can't, a zoning permit simply can't do that. So regardless of how this was done, a variance is still required. I have like something I'd actually like to read instead of just winging this off the top of my head, but we do also have corporation counsel here who can kind of add to that, and we do have staff. Tracy Albrightson was the person who did the site visit and has been working with the Gralls to get through and get this into compliance. So we do have some other people that can answer questions as well.
With regard to Jerry's question, it's my understanding that a zoning permit, which for a lot of, in some sense is a building permit. They don't call it a building permit, but it does allow for a structure to be constructed. It's my understanding that a zoning permit, if it's granted, is valid for 1 year.
I believe ours are 2 years.
Yours are 2 years. Okay. I think that's kind of what Jerry was, that's why this permit was still open, if you want to call it that.
Yep, it hadn't expired yet.
So that might be something in
And
the future to address. Anyway, no, that's, I just wanted to clarify the length of time that these are applicable, I guess would be the proper term, you know.
Council, generally, does the act of giving a permit codify that the sketch is correct and all zoning laws are being met, including setbacks? Or is there still, responsibility on the builder to know it?
So ultimately, when everything is said and done, it's the responsibility of the property owner to make sure that their property is in compliant with all, applicable laws, ordinances, regulations. Our zoning officers, they can grant permits, but they can't change the law. So if they grant permits that are contrary to the state of Wisconsin state law or Dunn County ordinances, those permits are void. They don't have the power to violate those. So I suppose there's an argument to be made as to whether this entire permit as issued would be void or simply the parts pertaining to the detached garage. But regardless, our zoning officers can't confer the right to build a detached garage in violation of setbacks or any other regulations.
And you alluded to my second question, which is the permit currently contradicting only our county rules on setbacks, or is there any state law that the granting of this permit runs up against?
I believe it's just our setbacks. I don't think we've noticed anything else.
That's a county-wide thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
our
okay.
setbacks are county ordinances.
Yes, thank you. Jerry?
And can you describe the process of modifying a permit? Is that common, and how did the sketch get in, and how did that happen?
So we really don't have a permit modification or revision process. I've seen it done before, I believe. I can't recall one offhand. Our staff could kind of speak to that process a little bit more, but I've never done it. I've never seen anyone do it. I've never had anyone ask me about it. It appears that Jackie might have, I'm using her name now, staff person Jackie might have just pulled that permit from our files, the actual paper copy, drew that in, and then scanned it. And I believe she did send a copy of that drawing and the permit to the applicants. So they were able to see that. But there was nothing in the documentation that said what the setbacks were, what the requirements were.
And no staff member re-signed this document or re-put it through, like the original permit obviously included like a little bit of money and a stamp of some kind.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there would be a fee collected, and then a stamp. So typically what we do when we get a permit application, we ask them, put everything on there that you want to build in the next 2 years. If you want to build, a house, a detached garage, detached garage, a deck, put it on there. It can all be in one permit. We have one fee for that. And then if you need to do any modifications, we ask that you call us and then we can correct those things. So say somebody wanted to move the location of a deck or expand the deck or things like that. So we can take that information and we would have to go through it again, the entire process, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it would just be that same permit. We might require a different permit if it's a large enough. If we need to go out there and reconfirm where it's staked out or do any site visits,
It seems like that process did not happen this time around.
it doesn't appear that I didn't find any documentation that she did, and I don't believe when we spoke to her on the phone that was done. And also I should say too that this is a permit for a use. These aren't building permits. Building permits are the ones that are going to look at, are you meeting electrical code, things like that. We're not going out there after this structure is built and inspecting it in any way. That is not a part of our process. Even when the house was built, we're not driving out there and confirming that it was built in the right place. So honestly, we won't hear whether there's a problem unless there's a complaint, and then we respond to it. Tracy, did you have anything to add as far as the permitting and revision process? Okay, was I correct in how you would handle a modification or a change?
Yeah, since there's nothing in writing, how we are able to modify or revise a permit, it's very case by case. And to the staff who is revising it, their comfort level of when they feel a new permit is needed, or is it a small enough revision that a new fee is not required.
Thank you. And you said this is not a building permit. When the house was built, did a separate building permit have to be obtained? And was a building permit required for this shed? Garage?
So building permits are done through the town. So we're not really involved in that other than kind of being in communication with the town about the permit being issued and then some communication with the building inspector. I really can't speak for the building inspector in the town of Red Cedar and whether a building inspection was done on that property. Would you have required it, Bob, for an accessory structure? All right. Yeah, so typically the building permits, they're looking at uniform dwelling code. So if no one's living in the shed and there's no indication of that, there's typically not a permit required. Some towns do require a permit for accessory structures, but most of them are only looking at the dwellings.
But it is the permit that you issue that talks about setback, zoning.
So the permit, there's nowhere on the permit that asks for setbacks or locations. We just have that drawing. So we go by typically what the applicant draws. And then we ask that they stake out where they intend to put the structure, and then staff typically goes out to the site to confirm that those stakes are meeting. We're also not confirming the property line location. We are simply going on what the property owner says. So if the property owner says, here's my property line, here's where my shed is, we'll measure that distance. If it's meeting the 10-foot setback, which in this case it is meeting that side yard property setback, we can confirm that. However, if it's done in the manner that it was, where, it's just called in and said, hey, this is the revision we're doing, and it's left at that, there was no opportunity for us to go out there and confirm whether those were meeting setbacks or not.
Okay. Mark?
I don't know, just reading this whole packet, it just seems like, the property owner, did what they thought was right by contacting and they made the initial call, to add this detached garage. I don't like to say it, but it appears to me that the zoning, the individual that did this made an error. Whether it was not to follow the zoning office protocol or whatever you might want to call that. So it's difficult for me to say that this property owner did this willingly without advice or following proper channels. So to me, it's an error. It's an unfortunate error that the zoning office personnel that were dealing with this made. In all my years on here, there's only been one time that we actually required someone to move or take down or undo something. And that was when there was a clear situation where it was done, it was just done with no consult, with nothing. They just figured I'll do it. And after I got it done, then we'll get the variance and it'll be there already. And I don't think that this meets that type of criteria, reading through all the material that I've read. We have had instances where someone did something that was in violation of the setbacks. However, there was already structures. Some of the ordinance changed, the setbacks change over the years, and some of the revised revisions change, so the setbacks change too. And I can just think of one instance where we had someone who had a building here and built another building with the same setback, assuming that he got the approval for this one, that this next one was okay. And but in the meantime, the ordinance was revised and the setbacks were increased. So this is kind of a difficult one because I think I understand the adjacent property owners dilemma, if you want to call it that, with the site, with the site view that they purchased their house with, and but I don't think that the one of the criteria was unique. Can't think of what it was called, but it was dealing with unique topography. This one here is unique in the fact that this garage was built or the approval was given, if you want to call it that, with this addition to the zoning permit. And it was done in error without following the criteria that typically is followed. So, I think, I don't know, that's what I look at. And so anyway, I'm done talking.
So I think I would like to just make sure that this board is understanding and aware of what our job is here today. It seems clear that a worker made an error that has now put the potential for a large expense on the back of the owner. But I don't believe that our job is to attempt to repair an error that has been made by the county. I think our job is to determine whether or not we can grant a variance. It is true that the shed is already built, but I believe that we should be thinking about this like if the shed was not yet built and somebody came to us with this variance request, would it be granted? And I hear that Bob, do I have it right? Is that your name, sir? Thank you. Sorry. He testified that, if it hadn't been built, they would not necessarily issue a permit for this particular shed in this particular spot. Another just thing I would like to point out is that the house was built on this grade. So if you can properly build a house by the use of moving the land around to get a flat spot for the house, it's potential that if it had been planned out properly from the very beginning, the location of the well and the location of all the buildings could be properly, the excavation could be done properly to have that shed in compliance with setbacks. So I just want to and can you counsel tell me if I'm like on the right track here about what it is that we're accomplishing? It's really difficult. It's a very difficult position to be put in. But any mistake that was made, I think it's clear that an naivete of the law is not a valid reason to not follow the law. Advice?
Yep, that's generally correct. Ann's gonna bring up kind of those three standards the zoning board, or the three factors the zoning board needs to consider.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jerry, and then David again.
And do we know if the home builder built the detached garage or if someone else built it?
Yeah, so the detached garage was not a part of the original permit, and that home builder, I think it was Timber Ridge Homes, built the home and the attached garage, and those were the structures that they built. And then I believe they did also, there was a septic permit involved in that as well. This detached garage was done later, and that was, again, another reason that an application, it still said the old
But if
owner's
somebody else
name.
did it,
Yes, somebody else, I'm assuming the current property owners applied.
built it,
Correct, or hired someone
different than Timber Ridge.
different than Timber Ridge, but I can't say that for sure.
Do you want to ask the applicant?
Thank you.
I'm just going to repeat that for the record since I don't think it was heard, but the applicant confirmed that somebody else built it, not Timber Ridge Homes. So I do have those hardship tests brought up. I can go through them if you like, or we can or I can have Christian speak to that.
You know where Dave went? Expect him back soon.
Expected back soon.
Probably wait for David to come back.
What's that?
We could just take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, that would be great. Let's take a short recess until we are fully seated. Thank you. Okay, we'll finish our recess here. I think at this time I would be looking for additional questions for staff. Interest in bringing our applicant back up or a motion.
If I can just jump here.
Yes,
I
please.
want to touch on these kind of three standards the board has to consider. You generally all familiar with these. We have unnecessary hardship, which generally touches on it would be really restrictive for the applicant to kind of use their property if the zoning ordinances were read strictly and applied strictly to them. Factor two, we have conditions unique to the property, so you can't grant a zoning ordinance to a property that if, there are a whole bunch of similarly situated properties out there that, that same sort of variance might be applicable to. And then three, no harm to the public interests. And so there's kind of case law out there that it kind of expressly touches on the scenario we have here, where an applicant basically reached out to the county zoning office and obtained a permit or obtained some sort of guidance or assurance from the office that what they were doing was correct. So they proceed, they construct whatever they were constructing, and then after the fact, it's discovered that, that permit or that assurance was in fact incorrect, and that the structure currently constructed is essentially illegal. And so the board can take into account kind of those circumstances for the first two factors. So the fact that kind of our zoning office made an error, that can be considered an unnecessary hardship. The fact that they've, spent however much money they've spent constructing this garage, and it would cost them however much it would cost them to move it if that's what they were ultimately required to do. They're in that situation because of an error on our parts. That's an unnecessary hardship. Can also be considered a circumstance unique to the property, certainly. And happily, we don't make these errors with every sort of applicant that comes to our office.
So just to confirm, you're saying the error makes this a unique property, not the slope?
It can. That's for the
We
board to
could read it
decide.
that way,
Yeah,
okay.
but it opens the door for the board to find that there are conditions unique to the property. The board is still going to have to come to a decision on number 3. You're going to have to balance public interest at play here.
And so specifically under that number 3, planned and orderly land use is probably one of the bullet points that should be considered, as well as property values and property tax base. Are there other ones in this bullet list that you think are at play specifically? I think H, is the use of the land in accordance to the character and adaptability when you think about the idea of 30 more people coming forward with this.
I'll just touch on that too. Granting of a variance in this circumstance in no way sets a precedent for future applicants. So if 30 more people came to us with that and they hadn't obtained, kind of erroneous permits from our office, like we said, it would be difficult for them to meet these standards.
Thank you. If nobody right now has any other questions, Anne, you mentioned that there was something that you might like to read. Will you please read that for us? Whatever it is.
I have to think about it again. I believe it was just, how I had explained this in our letter to the applicant, just saying, why the variance procedure was required. And essentially, I think we ended up covering that anyway, but the issuing of a zoning permit it can't change our rules. The rules are still there. That's why we're here today.
Mhm.
I'd have to bring it up on my computer, so I really don't want to do that, but I certainly can. It's in the packet. My letter is in our packet.
Right.
I'd like to ask Bob about the permit.
Yeah, okay. Jerry has a question for Bob. Bob, do you mind stepping up again? You're already sworn in. Go ahead, Jerry.
Hi, Bob. Thank you for appearing. So I now understand the process which happened for the zoning permit. Can you describe the process for the building permit that allowed this structure to be built there? Was it modified for a detached garage after the fact?
We do not have a permit in Red Cedar for the structure.
So any owner can put up a detached garage without a building permit?
They have to file a land use permit, a $25 fee for that
That's with you?
with the town of Red Cedar.
Did that happen for this detached garage?
I don't think so because it went under their original permit. I don't keep a record of land use permits.
How long does the land use permit that was applied for originally for the home last? So
I do not know.
you want to build a house, you get a zoning permit, you get a building permit, land use permit, and I build it.
And when that happens, that's conducted by Fred Weber, the building inspector, when he takes care of billing out for the land use permit, gives $25 to the town. So therefore we're notified that, okay, there's gonna be a structure going up here.
Do we know when he inspected the home and said it's cleared for occupancy and we're done?
I do not know that. I don't keep those records. Fred does.
So Fred could tell us if that was done before the garage was built.
The owner might have some information too.
But I don't know if that's relevant or not. I mean, I'm just kind of trying to understand the process of how things get built in Red Cedar Township and when one stopped, one starts.
Yeah, and I've only given out a few land use permits. And that's typically when someone has an established home, farm, and they want to put up a pole shed,
Right.
and they want to put up, a gazebo or something that's gonna be on concrete. And then we meet with them and issue a permit. But I don't know the length of, that it applies. I mean, to me, it's just it's a fee that covers the paperwork that's gonna be,
In your opinion,
Used
do you
in the
think you
town.
should have collected a second fee for this detached structure?
I don't think so, because it was part of the original permit. It was added onto the permit.
It was added on to the building permit of the home?
Well, that's what I see.
The zoning
I
permit.
haven't seen the building permit. I've seen
I'm
the zoning.
probably confused on the term, building permit, zoning permit. We do not get a building permit in the town of Red Cedar. That's handled by Fred Weber and the county.
So your board met about the concern,
Yes,
not the original issuement of the permit.
right.
Fred does everything.
Yeah,
So if I want to build a house,
Yeah.
Fred takes care of it.
yeah, we don't have any forms or authority over that.
Does that sound correct? I'm very
That's
confused.
What an understanding is, typically we reach out to the town in which the variance request is being solicited from and ask for their opinion. Is that what you guys?
That's what we did, yeah.
Right. So they were meeting about the township's recommendation on this variance application.
I got you. Anne?
So building permits are done by a building inspector, so Fred Weber in this case. However, it is the town that is involved in that process. So Fred is essentially working for the town to
Representative.
issue those
Mhm.
building permits, not the county.
Okay,
Also correct that the Fred Weber does not get involved until the zoning permit is given. Right? The zoning, from my understanding, the way it works is if somebody comes to Bob and said, we want to build a house. Bob, you would send them to get a zoning permit down to the county.
yeah,
Once that zoning permit is given, that essentially is your building permit. Is that proper? Or do you have a separate building permit as additional?
I do not think we have a separate building permit. If there is, Fred knows about it, but we don't get involved in that because he handles everything from
Yep.
from the county through construction and inspection. Yeah,
So the question,
Oh,
I think we're just we're bogged down in the details here. I'm not sure how much we want to keep going,
no,
but
I agree. What I'm wondering is, what was the time lapse from the time the house was finished?
One at a time. Hold on, Mark. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want, David has something that he thinks might be helpful to say.
Our township has Fred Weber too. And Fred Weber does it all for the town board, so you're not gonna know what's going on. I'm not gonna know what's going on. But I do have a question. The first building permit, who asked for that? Or the zoning permit?
so the zoning permit
Yep.
was done by Timber Ridge Home.
Right. So this is different party. They bought the house.
Yep.
Now they want to build a shed.
Yep.
As far as I'm concerned, it should have been another one. If Fred Weber was in our township anything that isn't an ag structure,
Mhm.
which this isn't.
Right.
Brad would issue a permit for. When a resident asks me, do I need a permit? I tell them, I give them Fred's number, say, talk to him. He knows all the laws. He'll send you to the county if you have to go. So the point, one of the points is the original house permit wasn't in these people's names. It was Timber Ridge. So if it's gonna change, if something's gonna change, it should be a second one. The other thing, the way I understand in my township, or that it happens anyway, if somebody wants to build a structure, they would, we tell them to call the county and ask, if they need something. They have to give you the information of where it's going. If it's going in the middle of a 10-acre parcel, you don't really care as long as it, where it's gonna be.
Mhm.
You don't know where it's gonna be unless they tell you. So it's their responsibility to let you know where it's gonna be built. Whether it needs setbacks or not. They don't know that unless they're told that.
Yeah.
And everybody building something near a road or a property line knows that there's setbacks. They should be asking those questions.
So we're back to the fact that we made an error at the county office, which, oh, go
And
ahead,
one more
Jerry.
thing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
My other thing is, speaking to what you said, that this doesn't set a precedence. But in reality, it does, because one thing that showed is if you don't like the answer, build it and deal with it later. It's always easier to ask for forgiveness than it is, your answer is always different. Now, I don't know, I guess being a chair on the town board for many years and dealing with issues, it frustrates me when somebody does something and then they ask for forgiveness. Just, now I'll shut up. Take care.
Thank you, David. Jerry?
I just want to highlight the fact that Timber Ridge applied for the initial permit. They built a home. And then some other builder built another thing under a old permit that wasn't taken out by the homeowner or that builder. That was different. So it kind of clarifies as to, I know it seems like there was a county error, but I'm not leaning that way, that it was a county error.
Okay. And yeah, yes. But you have to come on up and approach the bench.
Pull up where your team member, yeah, the drawing and the revised permit on it. She put our name on the building permit. So she changed the name from Timber Valley, or Timber Ridge, whatever I think they were Timber Ridge. So she's the one who changed the name on it. So this has Timber Ridge, and as you go down to like the drawing, I thought she wrote our name in on it, and that's when she revised it to have. Yeah, I was gonna say it's on there. Oh, it's cut off at the top. Owners Thomas and Kari Grau. So that's it. And then our email address is up there. So she's their team member put that information in. They're the ones that then noted on it that the garage is being, the detached garage was going to be created by us and not by the original builder. So she's the one who wrote that information in there, and she's the one who drew in the garage where it is when we told her that that's what we were looking to do.
Okay, so I believe our work at hand right now is to go back to those 3 points and to determine for each of them if we are going to apply the fact that there is an error-prone process to number 1 and or number 2, and then we're going to discuss number 3. And our job right now is to determine if this applicant has proven like the legal application of this variance. So the first one, unnecessary hardship. A personal inconvenience is not sufficient, and a specific desire, or you remember we learned about like a growing family, somebody needing more space, is also not enough to meet unnecessary hardship. In this particular case, we could argue that an unnecessary hardship was caused by the errored process that resulted in the owner feeling ready to build that shed. What do you guys think? Let's have a go around. Maybe we could start with Mark and work back towards me. Do you think there is an unnecessary hardship in this case? It doesn't have to just do with the wishes.
I do.
And you think it is because of the error?
Yes, I believe the unnecessary hardship, in this case, isn't up there.
Thank you. Jill?
I tend to agree with Mark, but it's difficult when you look at a personal inconvenience is not sufficient. And then to reconcile that with the fact that the hardship we're talking about is not necessarily listed in there. So
Yeah, thank you, Jill. David?
I have a real hard time with this. There's definitely a hardship when you think about the expense that's been created already. I wasn't there and I don't know how it went with the application, but to me, if I'm gonna call and say I want to build a structure on my property and I never had a building permit before or a zoning permit, I don't know how it got added to the original one because it's two different people that had it. So, you know, if the call was made and said, well, we just bought this home, it's, they just built it, it's got a building permit, we'd like to add a detached garage to that building permit, you know, I mean, I don't know, but if they called and said, hey, we have this property and we'd like to build a detached garage, and the county personnel said, oh, we can add it to this, even though it's a different name, then I totally agree that maybe they were led down the wrong way, but I think the property owner has quite a bit of responsibility too, to make sure things are right. I think they have to tell zoning, you know, that where it's going, what they're doing, and I don't know if all that happened.
Thank you. Jerry?
It's not necessarily listed there. I mean, obviously the cost of doing something is going to be a hardship, but as defined by item 1 there, no, it's not.
My feeling on this one is that it is not an unnecessary hardship under normal circumstances, but this case law that's referred to, I think that in this particular case, because of what happened, the owner has a current unnecessary hardship in this puzzle. Okay, now we're going to do this again with number 2. So we're mixed on that one right now. Okay. Unique property limitations. So this is the slope issue under normal circumstances, right? Are there unique property limitations that make it impossible for this shed to be built anywhere else? We'll go the other way this time. I think that this does not apply under normal conditions because the whole house was built on the same slope, so it can be done. And I think if this was coming before our group and the thing wasn't built yet, we would be saying, you can make that retaining wall 20 feet farther back and get it in there, in my opinion. Whether a unique property limitation is created by the mistake. Council, do you mind just saying one more time how that case law was applied?
So the case law is, I mean, it addresses this situation, but it doesn't take into account, any other potential geographical oddities that might be present, but the case law is clear, and I'll cite it. It's Accent Developers LLC v. City of Menominee Board of Zoning Appeals, 300 West 2nd, 561. And it essentially says that mistakes on the part of the zoning office can constitute unique property limitations, essentially because these mistakes are presumed to be fairly unique to specific pieces of property. We're ideally not making this sort of mistake on, every house in that subdivision that might apply for a detached garage.
Thank you. Jerry?
No, it's not a unique property, in my opinion.
David?
No, it isn't.
Jill?
I don't think it is, based on looking at the photography of that land.
Mark?
Well, I guess I think it is, I think it does follow under that case law. Simply because the way this was done, first of all, the building permit or the zoning permit, you can't just alter it and say, Timber Ridge built the house, they got the permit. And then you write at the top that now the owner is this, and then you add in a detached garage to that permit because it is still within the limitation of the 2 years. So I agree with the case law in this case. I think what the case law shows is that the first two, it applies to the first two. Put it that way.
Thank you, Mark. So mixed there as well. Last one, no harm to public interest. So this is whether or not the granting of our variance harms the other people in the neighborhood, the land, the water, etc. We heard from one neighbor who is probably the neighbor most affected by this, and we can see that the placement of the shed is not in the spirit of the setback law and has therefore automatically changes the views available to the other landowner. So we get to pick whether or not this is enough to constitute harm to public interests and whether or not this could be not protective of property values and property tax base and encouraging orderly land use and planned development. Which way are we going, Mark?
This is a tough one. I think that I can understand the testimony of the nearest neighbor. Makes totally sense. The pictures make total sense. I'm not sure in my mind, if they were to sell their property, that it would lower the value of it. Because the people that would be buying it would be buying it with the garage there already. So they would be looking at it, that way. I can understand the people that are currently, expected to have that view. Um, I don't know. These are always difficult, and that's about all I can say about it.
Thank you, Mark. Jill?
I don't think it reaches the level of harmed public interest. So even though I understand what they're saying, but that is my opinion.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I agree with that. I understand their outlook, but, I don't think it reaches that level of harm.
Jerry?
Just the fact that section 13 of the Dunn County ordinances state 30 feet. It's for safety and it's public interest. That's why we have the rules. So yeah, it harms. It doesn't comply, so therefore it's harmful.
Yes, I was looking at it a little different than that.
I mean, safety of driving
Yeah.
and campers sitting there,
That,
you know, there's.
that concerns me a great deal.
Yeah,
I
think-
was thinking of the site and stuff more, than it does.
I mean, the pictures are. Feel for Barbara, but I think it's more about safety and there are rules there.
Okay. Am I correct that we would be making a motion either way, either to approve with conditions, or deny the request for a variance?
Yes, but in order to approve it, the board is going to have to find that all three of these elements are met.
I got you. Yeah.
So it might be a good idea to explicitly go through each one. And if you want to take a vote on each one, that would probably not be a bad idea.
Okay. So, we did not achieve consensus in this discussion, obviously. And so what I would like to do is see if there is anybody who wants to make a motion to approve this, so that through discussion, we can get to our individual votes on the matter.
What are you asking for? A motion to approve the variance, or are we looking at each one individually?
I think if we put a motion on the table to approve the variance, we would want to, in discussion, step through to confirm that the applicant has adequately shown the board that all three of these conditions are met.
Okay. And so to have the discussion, we would have to have a second as well?
A motion needs a second in order to be alive. Yeah, that's right. A person could also move to deny this request because they think that all three conditions have not been met. But one or the other of those should occur.
I'm glad this comes for a vote. I'm going to make a motion to approve the variance. And I don't know that there were any conditions attached to this, except that it does not apply to any other precedent. It doesn't set any precedent.
Mark, you have two conditions right in front of you on this board here, labeled number 1 and number 2. If you would like to look at those.
Yep. Well, I agree with those. I make a motion to approve, based on, with those, two conditions. And,
Okay, so that's a motion.
Yep.
Do you want me to read it or you got it, recorder? Can grab those? Okay. Do we have a second to that motion to approve the variance with these two conditions as seen on the screen? I'll ask 2 more times. Do we have a second to that motion? Jill seconds the motion. So our motion on the table is to approve this variance request. And in order for us to vote yes, we need to confirm that all 3 of these legal standards have been proven by the applicant. So we've already gone through each of them and we are mixed on all 3. So does anybody have, for those who made the motion, I think you want to do some discussion here to convince movement on the board.
I guess I will say, to me, to me, the case law that the attorney cited, clear up for me, number 1 and 2 on this board. The third one is the difficult one for me. And with all the testimony that we've heard, I am sympathetic to the adjacent property owner. I don't think it'll lower their property. It definitely limits their view. It's an unfortunate thing that has occurred here. But I am satisfied, on the one sense with all the testimony, with Bob Cook, the chairman, because my concern wasn't necessarily with, some of the other things that were being discussed. I was more concerned with the safety of the entering and exit of that garage. And Bob kind of helped me get some clarification on that. Otherwise, I don't, like I said, nobody likes these ones, and but I think that's all I have to say.
Can understand the 2 of the unique property limitations where would be a hardship due to the new conditions. There's both sides. It's a hardship financially, but I don't know if that is what we're looking at. It could be in a code compliant location if they moved it back. But I also realized that they got the place where they are because of them understanding the paperwork that they got first. And I think of what Jerry said, or Dave, the general public does not know if they think they're doing right, they do. I mean, they really do think they're trying to follow the rules. It's when you come in after the fact and have never filed any paperwork and then ask for a variance that it is problematic. So I think I'm leaning toward favoring it.
Do you mean what did Jill just say? Jill just said that she's leaning towards a yes vote on granting the variance. Yep. David?
I guess I can totally understand for unnecessary hardship, there's probably the mistakes if they were made, by the county leading to the issues. But when you talk about unique property limitations, I believe there was a place that it could be put, elsewhere. And for number 3, I believe there is harm to the public interests, with safety and stuff. That's why those setbacks are there. And as Bob pointed out, if it wasn't there, they wouldn't have given them, the okay to build it there. They wouldn't be in favor of that simply because of the safety aspects. So I guess I'd have to say no, I can't support, giving the variance.
Jerry?
I'm very much in line with Dave on that. Maybe one, but not 3 of those. All 3 of them can't be justified.
I feel that notwithstanding the prior case law, it's extremely clear to me that some unnecessary hardship has befallen this owner. It's a big deal, and I'm sort of disappointed and embarrassed that an error like this has such a big consequence. So I'm really hopeful that the office is clear on ways that we can prevent this kind of miscommunication in the future. I do think it's really difficult for me to get past the statement that says, if a code compliant location exists, a hardship due to unique property limitations does not exist. So I'm struggling to get to a yes on number 2. I don't feel like, the locations of there is a potential. It's possible that that shed could be built farther back. And I think that I'm confident that my vote would have gone that way if the shed had not been built. So this is a real bummer. And I do think that, again, it's not the purpose of this board to right the error that has happened. I think we just want to make sure that the applicant knows about other ways in which they can attempt to remedy this situation. We have the 3 listed, right? They get a variance, they move the shed, or they take it down. And I think once, a lot of money and headache is happened, there's probably some other venues that could be explored by the owner. I think we can have a roll call vote for this motion. A yes vote, meaning that the board member feels that all 3 conditions have been met. A no vote means a board member feels that not all 3 conditions have been met. And after that, we can, the motion will pass, or we can entertain another motion. Does anybody want more discussion, or are you ready to vote? Mark?
I want a little more discussion. If the motion, if it's not approved, I don't have a problem one way or the other here. I'm not trying to push one way or the other. Because from my view, my initial comments when this started was for thinking that the garage could be moved back. Then the side setback would be less than 10 feet and such. And so, I think there are other remedies, but I made the motion, to approve and I will vote yes on that motion.
Further discussion, Jill? Did you turn your on? Oh, no further discussion? Oh,
sorry.
it's okay. Um, Can I just ask a point of fact, something that Mark just said? The lot lines are not straight, but what I see is that the lot line to the north does exactly parallel the garage. And so I just want to ask if moving the shed back, does it result in the inability to get to that 10-foot line on the lot line? It doesn't appear that way in here, and I just want to, for the record, know that.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say,
Yes.
actually, was that the well is back there, and I can bring that photo that shows where it is up to, if you'd like to see that. This isn't the best angle of it, but you can see that well head right there. Let's see if there's a better one.
You have a sign.
Right here. It is here.
And so the house is built very close to that wellhead. Access to the wellhead is the most important thing there.
So there's no setbacks to a well, for structures. I mean, if they really wanted, they could build the shed over the top of that. Most people would not want to do that because you might have to redig the well or do
Yes.
maintenance. You wouldn't want to, I wouldn't recommend it.
No.
I have is if it was moved back, the side setback could be changed through a variance to probably not have the well be an issue. I know there was another comment made that the roof lines couldn't be more than so many feet from each other, according to a building or safety code. But anyway, just I think we may as well proceed with the voting.
Any more discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. I'd like to start with Mark.
I'm yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
No. So the motion fails. Do you feel like we need a motion, or has the request been denied by that motion failing?
You're gonna need a motion to deny the variance request.
Okay, I'll move to deny the request as a matter of form. Do I have a second? David second. So now we can have more discussion.
I think it makes sense for the property owner to work with the zoning and with the town to possibly find a remedy other than obviously this variance failed. So that might, which means that shed will have to be moved someplace or removed. So I don't know how much more discussion you can have there. Crystal, can we, at this point in our meeting, or can we still have someone in the audience speak?
I don't, oh, go ahead.
Whatever form your discussion, however you want to format that discussion is, the board's prerogative.
Does the board have a specific question for the applicant or any other speaker? That, I mean, the hearing is closed, so the desire for someone to speak is not really what's at question right now, but it's whether or not there's a board member who needs some more information for their decision-making or for the discussion, for purposes of discussion.
Well, the only reason that you'd ask for is to clarify a position. I think that would be the only proper thing. No, I was just wondering if the chairman of the township would want to clarify the position. I guess I'd like to know if the town board in their discussion, when they said they would approve it, if they still what would be the proper, what am I trying to get at? I'd like, could Bob Cook from the town chair of Red Cedar clarify? And I think he probably has, that if it wasn't there, they would not approve it. And I think that's probably solves the problem. Thank you.
So I think we did hear that testimony. Go ahead, Ann.
So we do have the town's meeting minutes up on, I just pulled them up on the screen here. They were added to your packet, but they're up there. Also, there is no approval from the town for a zoning permit or a building permit. The building permit is issued by the town building inspector. I mean, it needs to go along with their rules if they have them, but there's no, they wouldn't have had a chance to approve or deny this. I don't believe, but maybe that's, I mean, the town board would not be making a motion or approving anything on that permit. Whether they agree with the building permit being done correctly is a different story, or if the building inspector should have looked at it is different.
Deny the request. The motion to approve was voted down, which means I think the next action would be to make a motion to deny it.
So I made a motion to deny the request already, and
Oh, okay.
David seconded
okay.
it. And we are now in discussion, and I think we've had that. Does anybody have more discussion? So we'll do a roll call vote again. Mark?
Yes.
So a yes vote is that you are denying, and a no vote. Okay, go ahead, Jill.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So that motion passes 4-1. I said at the beginning of the meeting that a decision made by this board, the applicant has 30 days to file a petition in Dunn County Circuit Court if in disagreement with this decision, and that is 30 days after something is filed. And we'll be working on that. I would assume that Ann will be in touch with the applicant as we do that work. And just another note to say that this is really difficult work that this board does, most especially when a mistake has occurred We aren't here to specifically provide a remedy for that mistake, but to follow the law with these, as it pertains to these three rules. So thank you to the board for how difficult this is. Thank you to everybody who spoke today, to the applicants especially. I empathize really deeply with you, and I'm very hopeful that resolution can occur in one way for you. So our business items are over, and are there any announcements or correspondence?
I know that we have someone who's interested in joining the board. I'm not sure if they've been contacted yet by the Board of Supervisors, but I will try to make sure that connection happens.
Thank you. That's great news. Our next meeting will be Monday, May 20th, also at 10:30 in this room, and I adjourn the meeting.